Mbali Police Commissioner General Thethani has addressed members of the South African Police Services as well as the South African National Defence Forces. He's at OR Tambo International Airport to check the state of readiness in terms of the response of officials, encouraging them to exercise maximum restraint, saying that people have the right to protest, but of course within the confines of the law. He's now leading a walkabout inside the precinct of the airport. That's where we find Mbali Thethani to tell us exactly what we're seeing and hearing this hour. Mbali.
Well, we are indeed on a walkabout with the National Police Commissioner, Thethani. Of course, this is as he continues to inspect the state of readiness when it comes to police personnel being deployed to this port of entry, which is also a national key point, but at the same time also taking into consideration that those who will be protesting will indeed have the right to protest, but that should not disturb or disrupt those who will be traveling. I'm going to bring him in now. He has just been briefed, of course, by the officials here who are stationed to the OR Tambo International Airport. Of course, this is to ensure that the police are always on standby to ensure that the protest is done within the confines of the law. Commissioner, you are here to give the marching lines to, of course, the police who will be here to ensure that peace and order is indeed installed when there is that national shutdown tomorrow.
Yes, thanks. We did a walk around and we have seen all law enforcement are in place. I'm quite satisfied that there is sufficient police. They will be able to make sure that the life of the people here goes well. Next to me, I've got the CEO of AXA, Ms. Mpofu, and she's quite happy with what, in terms of deployment of her own security and as well as the law enforcement. I think we are quite happy.
In terms of how the airport will be protected, I asked you a bit earlier on, and I think that you tried to answer me, but I didn't really get an answer. Should there be a protest tomorrow, what will the police do to ensure that people are still allowed to travel, but at the same time, those who will be protesting can still do so through the rights of the Constitution?
The police and the management of the airport, they have got specific places where there can be protests. And otherwise, the rest of the retail area, life will go on as normal. On the air side, planes will land and people will drop off and take off as normal. So the management of the airport as well as the police here, they will be able to say where can protest take place and where not. So that will be handled as it comes. So I can't be able not to say exactly where, but they will be able to handle that when it happens.
The police have also been criticized by a lot of South Africans, saying that why does it seem as if you're putting so much attention on this protest, specifically when you look at the outcomes of the court, saying that people can still continue to protest, but they should also, as much as they have the right to protest, there should be no intimidation or violence when it comes to this national shutdown being coordinated by the EFF. Why so much police personnel?
Look, we as the law enforcement of South Africa, we have to be responsible. When somebody says we are going to shut down whatever, we can't sit back and wait for the shutdown. And I'm sure the nation also expects us to prepare. So hence we plan, prepare, and make sure that we are ready to make sure that those that are protesting, they are doing it peacefully, and those that are not protesting, they are also protected. That's what we are doing.
And how important was this for you to actually go out there and deploy police personnel? Because the last time during the July unrest, the police were found wanting.
Well, we had police deployed. They were ready. They were overwhelmed. But still, I went out and we made sure that we mop up in certain areas. So this time, we made sure that the police are out, they are ready, they know what to do. And we don't think that it will get there. Police will be ready to definitely enforce the law, will protect everybody, but those that cross the line, definitely they will be dealt with.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to bring in quickly the CEO of AXA. I'm sure, you've got a task tomorrow to ensure that, flights do operate in the manner that they have to operate. Are you satisfied with the deployments now being made by the police to ensure that this place continues to conduct business?
Yes, we are. And this morning really was an exercise about ensuring that we have a state of readiness for tomorrow. We have international obligations. We are governed and managed also internationally and have to meet those obligations. So international arriving passengers have to basically take a normal journey through our terminal and not be disrupted by activities that are actually happening in South Africa. The General has already indicated we have special designated areas for protests, and we basically would be leading people to those areas in case they want to protest. But also in the terminal building, in the parking areas, in the airport precinct where we have a responsibility to secure the environment for aviation business to continue, we will ensure that that business continues in the normal way, because there are two groups of people here. There are people who might be coming to protest, who must be directed specifically to areas where they will be able to do that and exercise their democratic right. But there are passengers who are traveling, who booked these journeys many months ago, who could not change them. Others are traveling home to their businesses and otherwise, and they must be allowed to do so. So the presence of the security forces, but also the presence of AXA, is to actually facilitate what is an unusual arrangement that may emerge tomorrow. Our job is to ensure that passengers can get to their destinations, that arrivals can get to their homes. More importantly, that those who wish to protest are directed as to where they should do that in this airport precinct. The airport aviation business is recovering from COVID, and by definition, we have to normalize aviation and air transport business across the platform. We are going to do so tomorrow, and the plan is really being tested today as to whether or not we'll be able to execute. So we're quite happy with what we've seen. We are basically going to engage further and finalize the arrangements for tomorrow. But it's really just to normalize what can be an abnormal situation. And we are all here to just ensure that we are able to enforce. We're governed by aviation law that basically would restrict any person from interfering from the rights of a passenger from undertaking a journey they have paid for in advance, and they need to get to a particular destination. That's our responsibility. And together, I'm certain we'll work very well tomorrow to just guide the activities in the airport precinct platform.
Just lastly, should there be any disruptions tomorrow, how will that impact this airport?
Well, ma'am, we can't determine what kind of disruptions may happen. But generally, in an airport that is a national key point that is governed by international aviation laws, anybody who interferes with the normal operations will actually be acted upon, both by ourselves and the law enforcement, to stop them from disrupting the normal operations of this airport.
Thank you very much. Of course, that is the CEO of AXA there, Dudu, as well. Just clarifying there that they have an obligation to ensure that passengers do get onto their flights, because you would know that these kind of journeys is a journey that many can plan months in advance, so they wouldn't want to interfere with that process, especially at the same time that there are many businesses who are also running here. But we know that the EFF continues to highlight that when it comes to the issues that they will be protesting over, it is also the issues around a high unemployment rate in this country, and of course the issues around the electricity crisis as well.
Thethani at OR Tambo International Airport, where authorities there are saying, well, today the plan is being tested to normalize what may be an abnormal situation tomorrow. And the CEO of AXA making it known that there will be designated areas should protesters make their way to OR Tambo International Airport for them to picket. Much of the same for the Western Cape, because we heard from authorities there with the Western Cape Police Commissioner General Thembinkosi Patekile also making it known to our colleagues there that indeed protesters will also be guided in terms of where to march. Natalie, Malgas.
That's right, Dudu. In fact, we heard from the police top brass and the provincial administration that all the necessary plans are in place. Several strategic points have been guarded so far, and force multipliers have been deployed in the form of private security in some instances, in some neighborhoods of the Western Cape, but also the SANDF that have been deployed to some key areas already. We heard from the police commissioner that this is in the form of aerial support, boots on the ground, mounted soldiers and officers that will be patrolling the roadways and various key and strategic areas. Without going into too many details as to how many additional officers will be on the ground and be deployed to various areas and where those hotspots are for security reasons, he did mention that the national and provincial legislatures are among the key areas that they'll be focusing on, and here in Cape Town, the Cape Town International Airport as well. In fact, I'm now joined by the Community Safety MEC, Regan Allen, here in the Western Cape. Sir, just right off the bat, are you satisfied with where all the holes have been plugged and all the people standing on standby?
Indeed, we are ready. We have seen over the last 72 hours how the integrated approach in terms of all role players, including the SANDF, including the South African Police Service, law enforcement, traffic, disaster management, our neighborhood watchers, CPFs, all coordinating together to ensure that our province is safe. We have also seen that these threats and the potential for looting is quite serious. Hence, we had to be very proactive in that regard. We've already seen over 4,041 tires and other forms of matters being taken from strategic points like intersections, which could have been used in order to bring a particular area to a standstill. We don't want that in our province, and we definitely feel ready because we want our province to continue to grow. We want our residents to ultimately feel safe, be able to get to their job in order for the economy to grow, and not for a shutdown of this nature where people are literally intimidated if they do not comply with this shutdown.
MEC, let's talk about the sweeps that you've already done. You mentioned in some communities you've cleared intersections and street corners of potential material that could have been used in protests. What was the nature of those sweeps and the intel that you're hearing from the ground? Where are some of those hotspot areas that you are focused on?
Between the crime intelligence that we have been gathering, when we consider that there is information that is then relayed from our community members, from CPFs and neighborhood watchers, it is analyzed, we act on it so that it can be confiscated. We've seen it at major intersections close to our N1, close to our N2, but also in the Baden-Powell area, which is part of Mitchellsplein, Khayelitsha, all the way to Muizenberg. But we've also just last night again seen in the Kraaifontein area again. So we are very proactive in that regard to ensure that these materials are removed. It is a huge expense to government already when tires are set alight, because there's now additional staffing, there's cleaning that needs to be taken place, and it prohibits so many from actually going to a place of work where they can earn money in order to serve and to help their family. So we are continuing that over the next couple of hours leading into the Monday, but we are proactive and we are definitely ready. We won't condone any form of violence and of looting.
MEC, much of the attention has also been on social media, with several warnings coming from the briefing a little earlier that the Cyber Crimes Act and the Film and Publications Act will be instituted on whoever may be taken to social media. What were some of those warnings about inciting violence and intimidating? Part of the interdict and the court process that played out last week were as a result of some of the complaints already flagged by the DA constituency, this of course being a DA-led administration in the province. Are those also being focused on the social media streets, as it were?
The interdict is very clear that it includes the entire Western Cape, and part of those, and the wording in the interdict is clear, in that if any person incite violence, if any person incite looting, that person will be in contempt of that interdict. So we will have grounds to ultimately ensure that that person is held accountable, or persons, whether it is a public representative or a member of a political party, because we are wanting to ensure that law and order is maintained and that we don't have a state of anarchy and of lawlessness here in our province. So it is being monitored, and it is quite serious because some of these messages and videos is clearly inciting violence. It's clearly inciting for businesses to close down, and if they are not going to be closed down, then they will be looted, and that can never be condoned in a democracy. So we are very clear in that regard. Action will be taken.
Thank you very much. The Community Safety MEC here in the Western Cape, Dudu, again just reiterating what we heard from the briefing a little earlier, that all the necessary manpower has been deployed and is standing at the ready, and it's not just the ordinary streets that will be monitored, it will also be the social media streets that will be focused on, with many of the law enforcers saying dare to incite violence using social media, and they will throw the book at you.
Natalie, Malgas, that's the situation in the Western Cape where law enforcement is concerned. Thank you very much. We'll touch base with you a little bit later on.